Let's jump right into it. Today, we're taking a look at one of the most dynamic, vividly cinematic pieces of ancient poetry ever recorded, Psalm 29. In this explainer, we're doing a deep dive into the sheer linguistic power and explosive imagery of this ancient storm. And the best part, we're not relying on any outside commentary or long historical tangents. We are going straight to the source text to uncover a masterpiece that's been hiding in plain sight. This single block of text is our entire universe for today. It's the English Standard Version of Psalm 29, just 11 verses. It's an incredibly short poem, right? But as we look closely at this layout, and especially those tiny little footnotes down at the bottom, we're going to see a massive, moving picture unfold. We'll let the actual words anchor us as we track a literal geographic storm moving across an ancient landscape. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our literary roadmap for the day. We're tracking this storm chronologically. We'll start with the call to the heavens, move to the storm over waters, watch it breaking the cedars and shaking the wilderness, before we finally end up enthroned with peace. Let's trace this journey.
Section 1. Call to the Heavens. Setting the cosmic stage.
The poem kicks off by demanding attention. The main text in verse 1 says, "Ascribe to the Lord, O heavenly beings." But check out the incredible ping-pong effect happening down in the margins. The translators note that the original Hebrew phrase can actually be translated as sons of God or sons of might. Talk about a perspective shift. We aren't just dealing with generic angels floating around on clouds. We're looking at an audience of absolute raw cosmic power. The text establishes right away that the storm about to hit is so intense, even these mighty celestial beings are commanded to stand in awe. Moving right along to verse 2, this same audience is commanded to worship the Lord in the splendor of holiness. Beautiful? Yes. A little abstract? Definitely. So the crucial point here is found in another margin note. This phrase can also be translated as in holy attire. Boom. Suddenly we have a highly concrete visual. It's not just some abstract vibe of holiness. It's a royal court actively dressing up in majestic physical garments, prepping for the arrival of the king. It's a striking visual that really ramps up the tension before the storm even hits. Now, before this storm makes landfall, we have to talk about the number 7. If you scan the text, the phrase, "the voice of the Lord," appears exactly 7 times. Sure, 7 is a classic number of completion in ancient literature, but think about it poetically. Repeating the voice of the Lord 7 times in such a condensed space creates this thunderous, pounding rhythm. It literally mimics the sound of rolling thunder approaching from the distance. Boom, boom, boom. It is masterful, edge-of-your-seat suspense building.
That brings us to Section 2, the storm over waters, the first strike.
The voice of the Lord is over the waters. The God of glory thunders. The Lord over many waters. Just feel the staccato rhythm of verse 3. It's energetic, it's pounding. Notice how the poem doesn't say God made the thunder. It says the thunder is his voice. The immense, terrifying power of a dark storm system gathering out over the Mediterranean Sea is brought to life right in front of us, pulling in moisture and energy before it slams into the coast. And this brilliantly illustrates the actual geographic trajectory of the text. It's like an ancient weather map. Step 1, the storm gathers out west over the many waters of the sea. Step 2, it crashes into the towering northern mountains and cedar forests of Lebanon and Syrian. Step 3, it sweeps all the way down south into the barren desert, the wilderness of Kadesh. You can literally trace this massive weather system moving across a topographical map of the ancient Near East. Now we follow the impact, Section 3. Breaking the cedars, the storm hits land. The voice of the Lord breaks the cedars. He makes Lebanon to skip like a calf, and Syrian like a young wild ox. The cedars of Lebanon were essentially the towering redwoods of the ancient world, absolute symbols of unshakable strength. But this storm, it snaps them like twigs, and the metaphor in verses 5 and 6 is just incredible. The storm is so violent that the massive mountain ranges themselves, Lebanon and Syrian, are shaking and bouncing up and down like terrified leaping baby calves. The scale of this imagery is just staggering. Then, right in the middle of this roaring chaos, we get verse 7. The voice of the Lord flashes forth flames of fire. It's incredibly brief. It cuts through the narrative tension with a sudden, rapid staccato burst. You can almost feel the blinding flash of a lightning strike, illuminating these dark, violently shaking forests. The poetic timing is absolutely flawless. But the storm doesn't stop there. Section 4. Shaking the wilderness, moving south. The voice of the Lord shakes the wilderness. The Lord shakes the wilderness of Kadesh. Notice the deliberate repetition of the word shakes in verse 8. It really drives home the relentless, unyielding nature of this system. It doesn't matter if it's hitting the towering mountains up north or the flat, desolate sands of Kadesh down south. Literally nothing is immune to its power. Everything trembles. Now, what's really fascinating is the linguistic secret hiding in verse 9. The main text translates the effect of the storm as, makes the deer give birth, a super vivid image of animals thrown into premature labor out of sheer terror. But check out the footnote. It points out that ancient Hebrew was originally written without vowels. If you supply different vowels, a process called revocalization, those exact same consonants translate to makes the oaks to shake. What a brilliant ambiguity. We completely shift from terrified wildlife right back to battered ancient trees, keeping with that theme of the landscape just being ripped apart. Then the second half of verse 9 hits us with a sudden dramatic pivot. Outside, the storm strips the forests bare. Total environmental devastation. But instantly the camera cuts indoors. And in his temple, all cry glory. It's an amazing contrast. The violent chaos ripping things apart outdoors is sharply contrasted with the unified, awestruck response indoors. That celestial audience from verse 1, dressed in their holy attire, they are now standing in the temple watching this terrifying display, and their only possible response is to shout glory. Which brings us to our final act, Section 5. Enthroned with peace, the storm passes. The Lord sits enthroned over the flood. The Lord sits enthroned as king forever. Think about the massive contrast here in verse 10. The previous 9 verses were entirely about movement, right? Shaking, breaking, flashing, absolute chaos. But here, sitting, enthroned, stillness. The floodwaters might be raging below, but the king is perfectly stable above it all. The storm was temporary, but the throne is forever. It's this profound collective sigh of relief at the end of a terrifying event. And that relief is completely solidified in the final verse. Now, the main text offers a hopeful request. May the Lord give strength. May the Lord bless his people with peace. But once again, the margins change the game. The footnote reveals this can be translated declaratively. The Lord will give. The Lord will bless his people with peace. It transforms that final line from a hopeful wish into an ironclad guarantee. The storm has done its absolute worst, but the final word of the poem, the very last note ringing in our ears, is guaranteed peace. So, I'll leave you with this. After witnessing this wild journey from a roaring cosmic weather event to a state of profound, guaranteed peace, how does uncovering these ancient translation nuances change your experience of reading a text? Just by paying attention to the structure, the geography, and those tiny footnotes, an entirely new cinematic world opened up for us today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer to unpack this brilliant piece of literature. Keep asking questions, keep looking at the details, and I will see you next time.